Shalom. I'm Messianic Rabbi Eric Walker, and welcome to this edition of Revealing Prophecy. In the past, we have shared news stories with you. However, I want to encourage you to begin your own search for the prophetically important stories of the day by expanding your own set of reliable sources. Many of our featured guests, such as Carl Gallups, Rabbi Zev Porat, Dr. Michael Heiser, Dr. Michael Lake, Dr. Jeffrey Johnson, Joe Newby, and more, all have a wealth of resources available for you to research on your own. Read the Middle East news feeds and find trusted journalists who have their finger on the pulse of the prophetic as it unfolds around the world. We encourage you to visit ignitingnation.com for a full roster of live daily interviews and check out the Biblical Truth Library containing over 1,000 hours of rich Bible teachings. Download our new apps and subscribe to the Igniting Nation YouTube channel, Apple TV, Roku, Android TV, and Amazon Fire channels to watch our great lineup of guest interviews. And now for today's monologue. Several weeks ago, I shared with you the announcement from the Vatican that the Pope was advancing the cause of communism and had begun building relationships with Russia and China to further align himself with communist world leaders. This directly impacts 1.2 billion Catholics around the world and is tantamount to an endorsement of the left-leaning Marxist agenda being peddled in the election just 12 days away. Yesterday, this appeared across the major media feeds. Pope Francis has declared support for civil unions for same-sex couples for the first time, according to the Catholic News Agency. The Pope made the historic remarks in a new documentary film, Francesco, which was released in Rome on Wednesday. Homosexual people have a right to be in a family, he said. They're children of God and have a right to a family. Nobody should be thrown out or be made miserable over it, the Pope said in the film, the Catholic News Agency reported. What we have to create is a civil union law. That way they are legally covered, the Pope said. Francis has suggested in past interviews that he is not against civil unions, but this is the first time as Pope that he has directly come out in favor of them. As Archbishop of Buenos Aires, Francis advocated for same-sex civil unions as an alternative when Argentina was discussing whether to legalize same-sex marriage. This is the second week in a row that the Vatican has weighed in on a topic directly influencing the body of faith and moving the church that much further away from the truth of the scriptures. There is no diminishing the impact on Christianity, whether you are a Catholic or not. As many may disagree with the principles and foundations of the Roman Catholic Church, there is no other comparable voice within Christianity that represents 50% of the worldwide numbers of those who have made a profession of faith in Jesus. This is critical to understanding what the denominational divisions within Christianity have contributed to and why, but every research group out there has made it clear that the Judeo-Christian values that our country was founded on are no longer on firm footing. Dr. Michael Brown's newly updated book, Revolution, originally published in 2000, had chronicled a 20-year decline in the impact of Christianity on the moral values of our nation. In his newly released 2020 version, he clearly lays out that unless we return, each one of us individually, to a biblically based relationship with God through faith in Messiah and launch a personal revolution, that America is on the precipice of becoming the minority voice and the nation we love slipping into even further moral decay and corruption. Jason Jimenez, in his book Stand Strong America, makes the same statement as he takes us deep into our founding heritage and what is at stake if we do not return to a new awakening and revival that will stem the advancement of socialism and the further legislation of unbiblical and immoral laws that will force Christianity into a minority voice and render us ineffective and subject to persecution and the legislation of faith, regardless of the constitutional prohibition of any government intervention into our freedom of religion. We can be silent no more, or our children will be further indoctrinated into an anti-God and morally corrupt value system that it is advancing at an alarming rate. This is not a conspiracy theory. It's a reality that very well may be determined in the next 12 days. The media has corrupted the standards of journalism and have become the most influential platform capable of redirecting your attention to their agenda. Social media has become a cesspool of censorship, and truth is being withheld to keep you in darkness. The cancel culture has grown to the magnitude of having the ability to intimidate and threaten our personal safety, and yet it is not only permitted, it is encouraged and supported by the liberal agenda, who is organizing a full-scale boycott of the confirmation of a constitutionally supported Supreme Court nominee. Domestic terrorism is no longer a homeland security issue focusing on Islamic Jihad, but is being advanced in every major Democratic-controlled metropolitan area in our nation. They stand for nothing, but are fueled by only what they stand against. That is demonic and satanically driven, organized and funded, and will only increase if one candidate is elected, and if the other candidate is elected, it will be a national referendum in support of a systemic corruption within the hallowed halls of Washington. This corruption will rob every individual of the inalienable rights afforded to them by the Constitution, and will seek to rewrite the very document that has stood for 244 years. The Supreme Court will cross the line from being a judicial system of interpreting the Constitution to being a manipulated legislative tool to revoke rights granted by our founding fathers and replace with new laws that will restrict every citizen's right to independence. The very foundation of America is that government not grows so powerful as to impose its own agenda on the people, and we are seeing this principle being hijacked in front of our very eyes. The call for revolution is at hand, and it is a spiritual revolution appealing to the God of heaven and earth to save America from falling into the hands of the demonic agenda set before us. This is the battle Paul said we would have to be armored up for, and it is time for us to make our voices heard in heaven and petition God for mercy and justice upon this nation who now stands with Israel. Moses lay prone before God, appealing to his true nature, and we must do the same. In God's economy, 12 days is like 12,000 years. So do not think your petition and prayer cannot move the mountain being built before our very eyes. We are being called to pray like there is no tomorrow, as time is short, but God is faithful. It begins with each one of us, as it did with Aaron making atonement for his own sins before he could be used by God to transfer the sins of Israel onto the head of the goats. We must clean our spiritual houses, humble ourselves in prayer, cry out to heaven like never before and not stop. This must become the new shot heard around the world that ushers in a new awakening, a new revival and rebirth of the body of Messiah to take back our homes, our neighborhoods, our cities, our states, and our nations. Yes, time is short, but not too short for God. The prayers of the righteous avail much. This is our time to rise up on wings of eagles and mount the spiritual counterattack. We have dominion and authority according to Jesus' own words in Luke 10:19. Behold, I give you the authority to trample on snakes and scorpions and overcome all the power of the enemy. Nothing whatsoever shall harm you. You have the authority in the mighty name of Jesus. Cry out like you have never cried out before. As they cried out when Jesus entered Jerusalem, Hosanna, save us, O Lord. The words of Isaiah ring loudly in my ears. For Zion's sake I will not keep silent, and for Jerusalem's sake I will not be quiet, until her righteousness goes forth as brightness, and her salvation, her Yeshua, as a burning torch. If you remain silent, and you do not vote, and you do not pray, may God judge between you and me. And that, my friends, is this week's edition of Revealing Prophecy. This program, along with Revealing the Bible, are added to the Biblical Truth Library. Visit ignitinganation.com and check out the Biblical Truth Library and our guest lineup of daily broadcasts of Revealing the Truth. Follow us online through Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and subscribe to our YouTube channel, where you can catch up on over 1,800 interviews and never miss out on any of our great guests. Your comments and questions are always welcome, and you can use the contact form found on ignitingnation.com. Don't forget our regular live broadcasts are Monday through Friday from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. Central Time. And you can now watch a second channel on ignitingnation.com/live to watch a 24-hour day, 7-day-a-week feed of some of our featured guests. Until we see you right back here next week for a new edition of Revealing the Truth, we thank you for watching and bless you with Shalom.